Hello and welcome friends. Today we'll be starting Unit 4 in Advertising and Sales Management. You would recall that we have discussed what marketing mix is. Within marketing mix we have got product, price, place and promotion. And as far as the promotion mix is concerned, there are 5 elements which are part of the promotion mix. The 2 elements that we'll be discussing in this course, that we have already discussed in this course, one of the element is advertising and the other element is going to be personal selling, right? So as far as advertising management is concerned, which is part of the promotion mix, we have already had a discussion on this in the first 3 units. Now we are moving on to the second part, which is basically about the management of the personal selling effort. So basically we'll be talking about the sales management, which is basically sales force management, which is basically managing the personal selling efforts of a particular company. So this is going to be our agenda in Unit 4 and 5, right? So let us start off. Before moving on to the more detailed aspects, let us talk about what basically sales management is all about. As I have told you, it is basically managing the sales force, or in other words, managing the personal selling efforts of the sales force. So a company might be having a sales force which would be engaged in personal selling. They would be selling directly to the customers and managing this whole process. This is what sales management is basically all about. Have a look at this particular definition. This is a little complicated definition, so what you will do is you will basically divide this definition into 2 parts. So let us first talk about this part. It is basically planning, directing and controlling the selling efforts of the sales force. So what I am saying basically is that it is planning and directing and controlling the personal selling efforts of the sales force, whatever sales force you are having, how they would be engaging in personal selling, how their efforts would be controlled, how they would be monitored. Now this is what we have to do in sales management. And then this would also include recruiting the sales force. So how do you start off? You have to first of all decide as to what would be the appropriate sales force size that you would require, and then you would go about recruiting them, and then you would select them. The difference between recruiting and selecting is, I hope, clear to you, because this is something that we have already discussed in human resource management. So how you go about recruiting the sales people, the sales personnel, how you go about selecting them, how you go about equipping them. Equipping would mean providing them training, providing them skills, providing them selling skills, providing them presentation skills, equipping them with all the knowledge about your company's product and how it is better than the competitor products, equipping them with demonstration aids, with maybe leaflets, posters, brochures. So this is what equipping is all about, providing them all this kind of assistance so that they can go about their selling task in an efficient manner, and then assigning them some task, assigning them some kind of a target, which we'll later on get to know is known as sales quota. So assigning them some kind of a sales quota, then deciding what route they will be taking. For example, if the sales force, a particular salesperson is covering the Uttarakhand area, which route would he take if he wants to visit his territory? Would he start from Dehradun and from there Uttarkashi and then Chamoli, and then he will come to Bageshwar and then from there on to Pithoragarh and Nainital, or he would go the other way around? Which route is he going to adopt to while visiting his territory, while visiting the customers in his territory? So that is what routing is all about, and I hope you can understand that routing is a very, very important aspect, because just by following an efficient route you can cut down on the costs, on the travel costs of the salesperson, for example. Then not only this, once you have recruited and selected and equipped and also assigned some sales quota to your salesperson, then you also have to monitor, then you also have to supervise how they are performing, whether they are performing as per the expectations which were set in front of them. Are they performing as was expected from them? So this is something that you have to take care of. Then not only this, you will also pay them. That is basically the compensation part. So how are you going to pay your salesperson? Are you going to pay them a fixed salary regardless of the efforts and regardless of the outcome of their efforts, or are you going to pay them a variable kind of a salary where all the salary would be dependent on how they are performing? If they are able to sell the product, they would get the salary. In case they are not able to sell the product, their salary would be deducted. So what would be the mode of payment? So basically here we are talking about the compensation part. And then how are you going to motivate your salesperson? So all these aspects, they are part of the sales management, and all these aspects, in fact most of these aspects, we are going to cover in the unit 4 and unit 5, right? So let us move over to the objectives of the sales management. What are the objectives that we try to meet? So the first objective is retaining the market share. Now why this is the first objective rather than the second objective which has been mentioned here, the growing of the market share, increasing the market share? Why is this the first objective? Because studies show that retaining the customer is always going to be much more efficient. It is always going to be much less costly than acquiring a new customer. So the first objective is retaining, and the second objective is growing the market share, right? Now when we talk about the market share, then we basically talk about the value term as well as the volume terms. Now what is the difference between the two? So basically when you talk about market share, we talk about market share in the value terms, and we also talk about market share in the volume terms. Now what is the difference between the two? So I'll give you an example just to explain this. What is the difference between value and volume terms? Suppose this is a hypothetical scenario that we'll be taking. Suppose there are only two marketers in a particular market. There are only two marketers operating, no third market is there, and they are basically selling 50 units. So the consumption in the market is, the total market demand is just 50 units, right? Out of these 50 units, A is selling 40 units while B is selling just 10 units. Is that fine? And we have also given you the price at which they are able to sell their products. So A is basically selling at rupees 1 per unit while B is selling at rupees 6 per unit. So you can see here that though A is selling more number of units than B, A is selling 40 units while B is selling just 10 units. B is selling its product at a higher price. B is selling it at rupees 6 per unit while A is selling at rupees 1 per unit, which seems like pretty much normal, because naturally if you decrease your price, your demand is going to increase. So maybe A is a low cost provider while B is a seller of premium products, right? Now let us understand as to what we mean by volume terms. Total sales, in terms of volume. So we are skipping this part just to make you understand things better. We are moving to the market share part in volume terms. Now total number of units which are getting sold is 40 plus 10 is equal to 50. Out of these 50 units, A is selling 40 units. So in essence, A is selling actually to 80% of the customers, or let's say A is selling 80% of the units which are getting sold in the market, 40 out of 50, while B is selling just 10 out of 50. The percentage, if you do this calculation, you will find out the percentage would come out to be 20%. So if you talk about the volume terms, A is selling 80% of the units which are getting sold in the market while B is selling just 20%. So in that sense, A has got 80% of the share of the market while B has got just 20%. But if you start talking about the value terms, now we'll be covering this portion, and this was just to make you understand things better. Now what is the total sales? What is the total sales in value terms in the market? Now please have a look at this. A is selling 40 units at rupees 1 per unit. So basically the total sales for A is basically 40 units into rupees 1, and that comes out to be rupees 40. So A is making sales worth rupees 40 while B is making sales worth rupees 60, 10 units at rupees 6 per unit. So B is making these sales worth rupees 60, right? Now what is the total sales then? the total sales in value terms is rupees 100. 40 plus 60. Out of this rupees 100 value that A and B jointly are deriving from the market, please understand that in value terms A is selling how much? 40 rupees out of a total of 100 rupees. So the value of the items that A is selling is rupees 40, while the value of the items that are getting sold in the market, the total value is rupees 100. So basically A has got a share of 40%, while B has got a share of 60%, because the worth of the items being sold by B is rupees 60. The total products, the worth of the products getting sold in the market is 40 plus 60 is equal to 100. So B's market share in value terms would be around 60%. So this is the difference between the volume terms and the value terms. So it may so happen that the same marketer is a leader in both value and volume terms. However, it may also happen that one marketer is market leader in terms of value, and the some other marketer is the market leader in terms of volume. So this kind of discrepancy can be there, and we have taken up this example just to make you understand this thing, that this can also be a situation in a particular market. So if I quote the examples of let's say mobile phones, and we are talking about the smartphones. Now if you compare Apple with Samsung, you will find that this is the difference. If you talk about the volume terms, if you are talking in volume terms, you would find that in some of the markets Samsung is the market leader in volume terms because they are able to sell more number of smartphones in those markets. However, Apple is still the market leader in terms of value, in value terms, because the smartphones which are getting sold, the Apple smartphones which are getting sold are much more costlier than the Samsung smartphones which are getting sold. So in the same market, if you talk about value term, maybe Apple is the market leader, and if you talk about the volume terms, it is the Samsung which is the market leader, right? So this can happen in a market, and this is pretty much normal. So the first objective of the sales management was retaining the market share. Now let's have a look at the other objectives which are there. Growing the market share. So I told you right in the beginning that retaining the market share would always be prioritized over growing the market share. The reason is very simple. Retaining is always going to be much more efficient. It is going to be much more economical. It is always easy to retain a satisfied customer than to acquire a new customer. In fact, it is said that acquiring a new customer is almost 7 times costlier than retaining an existing customer. So it is always better to ensure that you are able to hold on to your existing customers, and that is why we have prioritized this particular objective, retaining the market share. Then growing of the market share again is a very, very important aspect. So you don't only have to retain the market share, you would always try to grow the market share also. So for example, if you are maybe occupying a 13% share of the market, you would always want to take it to maybe 15% or 20%. So growing the market share is another objective of sales management. Then servicing the existing accounts. Now what do we mean by this? What do we mean by the term accounts here? Accounts, basically we mean the customers, the existing customers that are there. The existing customers are those who have already purchased your product. So now you have to service them. What does this particular term mean, service? Service means, naturally, let's take an example of somebody who has bought a car. Now let's say you are a dealer of Hyundai cars, and somebody has bought a car from you, from your dealership. Now that person who has already bought a car from your dealership in the year 2018, he is an existing customer for you. But naturally, he may have requirement for some spare parts. He may have requirement for some replacements. He may want to replace his 2018 model car with a new model which has come up in the year 2020. So all this is basically servicing the existing account. So you'll have to provide all these services to the existing customers, and this is what servicing the existing accounts is all about. So another objective for sales management is to service the existing accounts. Now many a times sales management also provides support to the dealers. For example, if you talk about companies like LG, you have seen that they have got their dealerships in different parts of the country, in different districts. For example, if you talk about Pithoragarh also, you would see that there we have an LG dealership in Pithoragarh. Now, many a times the task of sales management is also to assist these dealers, these local dealers, small dealers. So how do they assist them? They provide them training. They provide them training on how to sell the product. They provide them training on presentation skills. They provide them training on the features of LG products and how they compare with the other rival products in the market. So this kind of product training is also provided. So these kind of dealer support is also provided by sales management. If I take example of Maruti does not only provide this kind of training at the dealership end, but they also take care of the HR issues at the dealership end, which means they take care of the compensation part. So they would provide this kind of hand holding, they would provide this kind of a capacity building to the dealership employees so that they can manage their human resource affairs well. So this is what we mean by dealer support, and many times this is another objective that the sales management has to achieve. Again, training dealer staff, I've already given this example. Many a times when a particular company comes up with a new product in the market, so they have to ensure that the dealers and the salesperson in the dealerships, they are very well informed. So this is another task that the sales management, this is another objective that the sales management tries to achieve. Training the dealer staff, training them and equipping them with knowledge about the new model that has come up in the market and how it scores over the other rival models in the market of the rival firms. So this is another thing that the sales management has to achieve. Then we've got market intelligence. What do we mean by market intelligence? Market intelligence is gathering information which can be put to some profitable use by the company management. So what kind of information are we going to collect? What kind of information is included in market intelligence? Customer feedback. What does the customer think about your product? How is he responding? Whether he's liking the product or not, whether he's satisfied with the product or not, whether he's got some complaints, or whether he's looking forward to buy the product again because he's very much satisfied. So this kind of a feedback has to be basically fed back to the company management, and this is another objective that the sales management has to achieve. Again, are the customer tastes changing? Is there a slow change in the customer taste? Because that would mean that the customer's product choice would also change. So that implies that the company would also have to bring about slow and gradual change in their product design because the customer tastes are changing. And if they don't do that, if they don't design their products according to the customer taste, then what will happen? They will be wiped out from the market. So this information is fed to them by the sales organization, by the sales division only. So this is another objective that sales management has to achieve. And then they also have to provide this information about what the competitors are doing in the market so that the company management is better prepared to deal with such competitor moves. So for example, let's say I am a salesperson and I am part of the sales force of Maruti, and I come to know that maybe Hyundai is planning to set up, Hyundai is planning to launch a new model of cars in the market. I would certainly want to feed this information back to my management, to my top management, so that they can also plan retaliatory moves. So these all basically comprise market intelligence, and this is another objective that the sales management tries to achieve. Then expense control. What do we mean by expense? So whatever expenditure you are incurring, your salesperson is incurring, you would want to control that. For example, let's take example of a salesperson who is moving about in the Uttarakhand territory and he is moving from one district to the other. So if he plans his route well, naturally he would be spending much less time and much less resources, and he would not have to spend too much cost on traveling also. So this is what we mean by expense control. How do we ensure that we achieve the sales target without incurring too much expenditure? That is what is another objective of the sales management, right? So these are the various objectives of sales management. Now before moving on to the next next section that we are going to discuss, I would like to brief you about the marks that you have scored in your quiz, which was conducted on 2nd of November and which covered Unit 3. So let me come back to that particular sheet. So these are the marks which have been scored by the different students. I have not been able to update this, so I'll update that as well. So the test was conducted on 2nd of November and these are the marks, and this is till date the total score of the students in the class. You can see here Kamal Kapadi is still at 0, while there are students like Vikas Joshi who have already moved to 5 marks. So please keep a check on how you have been performing, because ultimately that would decide your overall internal assessment marks. Thank you very much for your time. In the next session that we'll have very soon, we'll be taking up the discussion from where we are leaving it today, and we'll be talking about the scope of sales management. Thank you very much for your time.